Hey guys, welcome to, I guess this is Red Pill 101. We are doing a series of videos, short form videos, to sort of clear the air and to define terms. And so the purpose and the reason for these videos is going to be, really twofold. One is to clarify terms, because a lot of the things that I hear being attributed to quote unquote red pill creators aren't necessarily what a lot of people want them to would like you to believe that they are. And second of all is, with the best of intents, some creators right now just simply don't know the fundamentals behind what it is they're talking about. It's kind of like the telephone game. I don't know if you ever played the telephone game when you were a kid. Maybe when, I don't know, second grade, somewhere around there. And second grade, yeah. And you would get around like 10 kids in a circle, right? And you tell one kid, I don't know, a story, like a 3-line story. And then the other kid has to tell to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, until they get all the way around to the 10th kid. And then 10th kid, by the time it goes from the first kid to the 10th kid, the story has completely changed, or it's been completely mutated or just distorted, because just in the storytelling itself and trying to keep, the accuracy going. But oddly enough, by the time it gets to the 10th kid, then it's something completely different. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now in understanding what exactly the red pill is. It's easy to sort of goof on the red pill, or like sayings, or it's like, oh, I can't believe those guys believe that. But they just don't understand the premises and the thoughts and the how the equation was solved, I think. So to start off today, I want to get to actually it's an Iron Rule of Tomasi. It's Iron Rule of Tomasi number 6, and I'm going to actually, I think I'll just read that to you here. I've got it here on my iPad. Iron Rule of Tomasi number 6 is this: women are utterly incapable of loving a man in the way that a man expects to be loved. In its simplicity, this speaks volumes about the condition of men, not women. Remember, conditions of men. Okay. It accurately expresses a pervasive nihilism that men must either confront and accept, or be driven insane in denial for the rest of their lives when they fail to come to terms with this disillusionment. Women are incapable of loving men in a way that a man idealizes as possible, in a way that he thinks that she should be capable of. So what does that mean? Well, the root of that, or the core of this rule, anyways. And again, these are just rules, outlines, observations, and the idea is this: is that love, like respect and a few other terms or concepts, are what I call gendered concepts. And that means that each sex has a different concept of love or respect. And the root of most of the problems that I think happens between men and women, especially today, is this misunderstanding that there is a shared concept between the both of them. So when a woman says she is in love with a man, it is something that is a different concept than what a man says when he says he's in love with a woman. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit today. And the reason why I'm sort of dissecting this and sort of trying to define all of this is simply because it's been so distorted over really the last, 2 years, 3 years, maybe even 4 years now, with more people coming into this space and attempting at least to let's just say profit off of the ideas that they don't really have a firm grasp. They're like the 10th kid at the end of the telephone game, and they're retelling what they think maybe the 5th kid in line said, or possibly the 3rd kid in line said, and it's just not coming out right. And the problem that happens after that is that when that guy has to defend that the 10th kid in the telephone game, when he has to defend that point, he doesn't know what he's talking about, because he never really had a firm grasp of what the first kid was told in the first place. So that's really the purpose of today's video. We're going to get into a concept that I think is really being sort of misrepresented right now. And unfortunately, and this is no flame and no hit on my good friend Adam Sosnick, but recently he came up with this.
unconditionally, but women love unconditional, okay? Whereas like a man will go find a gorgeous little broke ass pretty girl and be like, get out of that trash can, girl, you're coming with me now, I'm about to change your life, have a baby by me, be a millionaire, boom, right? And we will do that for a woman, but women aren't necessarily going to do that for a man. You're not going to find some good
Hold that right there. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit on this one. The premise is this: is that men love unconditionally or women love conditionally, and that's not really Iron Rule of Tomasi whatsoever. It's the idea that women have a different concept of love, and that men have a different concept of love. So there's nothing really, at least as far as my book is concerned, for the past 10 years, there's nothing in this that talks about conditional or unconditional love. And that, I think, is sort of a buzz term, or that's an easy play to get, I don't know, the audience engaged, get viewers engaged, get the ladies on the panel engaged. Because what happens is when you term it in words like conditional and unconditional, it generates sort of emotion. It's an emotional appeal is what it is. So I don't think that most men really believe in unconditional love per se. But that's not the point. What Adam is kind of, as the 10th kid in the telephone game, what I believe he's trying to express is something that you probably will hear Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit express as well. But it's not about conditionality. It's not about wanting unconditional love. It's that men have a concept of love that is based on idealism, whereas women's concept of love is based on opportunism. Now, before you freak out and before you have all these feelings about the word opportunism, that is the most clinical definition that I can say. So don't look at it in terms of like I'm saying, oh, they're opportunistic, materialistic bitches. That's not what that says. What I'm getting at in terms of opportunism is that for women, in women's best interests, men have to meet a certain set of criteria before a woman will allow herself to become emotionally invested in a man. So what that says to me is that there's a certain laundry list of prerequisites and criteria that guy has to meet. And I'm not saying he has to meet every single one on the 436 bullet point list. But if the guy meets the top 4 or 5, maybe the top 6, and he's kind of shaky on number 5 and 6, he still might be workable. And the premise is still this, is that woman has a list of criteria, not necessarily before she'll have sex with a guy, but before she will emotionally invest in that guy. And that emotional investment we call love. So feelings of love, the trust, the vulnerability, the investment of emotions into that guy. So when I say a woman is opportunistic, I mean it in terms of the guy must meet a certain set of criteria before she will allow herself to become emotionally invested. Now, for men's concept of love is based on idealism. Men believe that women should love them just for the sake of love, that there's an idealistic element to it. I have another post, and it's actually, I believe it's a chapter in my first book, The Rational Male, available on Amazon. But it's called The True Romantics. And the 6th Iron Rule of Tomasi is really kind of an extension of the True Romantics chapter. And in True Romantics, I made the case that men are actually the true romantics, and they are the realists they pretend to be realists, but they are actually idealists at heart. They're actually the romantics at heart. But they pretend to be more realistic, more pragmatic, more sort of stoic, I guess. Whereas women, on the other hand, pretend to be romantics, but are really more materialists, more opportunists, more, and I mean in the nicest possible connotation that I can deliver this in, but are more pragmatic than romantic. Men, on the other hand, tend to be more romantic than pragmatic. But we play this game back and forth where one is expected to be more romantic. Or we think of romance, we think of women, but it's usually men who are delivering on the romantic performance, let's just say. So when I'm discussing, are we good? Okay, you're gonna cut that part out. Okay. So getting back to the point, the idea is this: is that men are the romantics pretending to be, or the romantics pretending to be pragmatists. Women are the pragmatists pretending to be romantics, or pretending to need romance in some way. Whereas when we're talking about love, when we transition over to sort of the concepts of love, men's concept of love tends to be more idealistic, based on that romantic ideal. It's not about unconditional love. I don't think any man really believes in the unconditionality of love, and in this case, love being the emotional investment of a woman. So we have to really kind of define terms, because when we talk about love, I can get into the nuts and bolts of it from it, and love being an emotive state, meaning that there's an investment in intimacy with that other person. So men tend to be more idealistic in their expectations of love, and that's why I said that women are utterly incapable of loving a man in a way that men believe that woman should be able to love him. And the reason why I say that is not because I don't think that women can love men. It's that absolutely the opposite of that. It's just that men believe that woman ought to be able to share his idealism when it comes to love. And women, on the other hand, expect men to understand that her love, her intimacy, her investment in him is dependent upon him meeting certain criteria. So when we talk about gold diggers, when we talk about women being materialistic, I think there's this misconception, and maybe in some cases justified. But the misconception is that incels think that women can't love men, and it's all about hate, and it's all about Rollo Tomassi says that men can't love women. No, that's not what I said whatsoever. It's the idea, anyways, that there's a miscommunication, or there's this belief that men will understand women's concept of love, and women will understand men's concept of love. And that the friction, the problems between both sexes really is somewhere in between that misunderstanding of that man believing that the woman loves idealistically, and that woman believing that man understands that she loves opportunistically. Go ahead. You can cut that part. Continue with the video here.
Looking homeless dude and be like, stop working at Burger King, buddy. Like, come on, you're gonna work with me. Meaning there are conditions that a man must meet for you to actually give him the time of day. I.e., so most women want a guy who's 6 foot. Okay. Most women want a guy who's making 6 figures. Most women want a guy who's
at least 6 inches.
At least 6 inches, right?
Okay, so let's explain this part right here. So he's not like, he's sort of got part of the story that was told to the first kid in the telephone game. And so the idea of conditionality is not necessarily something that's inherent to women's mating strategy. Because if you ask women, we've asked women on Access Vegas, I've heard this on Fresh and Fit, whenever they're confronted with something like this, like, women have conditions for their intimacy, most women will say, no, I don't, it's okay, I'd be happy having sex with the guy who's the barista or the sandwich artist at Subway. And they'll really cling very tightly to the idea that they want this sort of emotional connection, and he's got to be nice, and he's got to be this, he's got to like puppy dogs, he's got to come from a good family, he's got to love his mom, he's got to want kids, that kind of stuff. And that sounds very nice when the cameras are on, but it's not necessarily reflective of what we see out in the real world. So when you bring up the idea of conditionality, that's when you kind of lose the narrative here, because it deals in binaries. It's unconditional or it's conditional. And so what happens is when women are presented with what Adam Sosnick's talking about here, it's usually met with the idea that guys think that they're owed sex, or they think that they're owed love, or that they're the intimacy that a woman could feel for a man is all dependent on the expectations of the man himself. as I said before, women are incapable of loving a man in the way that the man expects to be loved, and that's where the conditionality and the unconditionality comes back in. No, it's not actually. It's not so much a covert contract. It's just simply this idea that woman understands his concept of love. The same can be true for respect as well. Like men believe that men and women have differing gendered concepts of respect as well. Men tend to see respect as something that is earned. What makes you respectable? It's hierarchical. Whereas for women, it's more egalitarian. Everybody deserves respect. You don't respect women, that kind of stuff. That is the even me saying that, like, you don't respect women. That whole attitude comes from the idea that everybody is deserving of respect, and it's something that's common. It's like common courtesy. Everybody, respect. You give respect, you'll get respect. That's not what men's definition of respect is. It's what did you do to earn your respectability. So, but the belief is that women believe that men think of respect in their terms, in that egalitarian, it's respect in the round, whereas for men, it's respect from bottom to top. And so men say, well, why should I respect a woman when she hasn't done anything to really earn my respect? And women will go, oh my God, what are you saying? All women deserve respect. And the truth of the matter is no, they don't. But we will go to great lengths to, socially engineer the idea that women should never be judged, and anything that could possibly do is like anything you would be critical of women for is something that is a reflection of shame, or it's judgmentalism on the part of the guy. Well, it's not. It's just that the man doesn't share the same definition of respect that a woman does. And so likewise, when it comes to love, women think that men understand their criteria. That's why we talk about like, oh, she's not meeting my needs, or he's not meeting my needs, or we're working on the relationship. It's usually because that man is trying to find some way to keep that woman content, because he wants to keep that, he wants to keep the pussy flowing, first of all, but second of all, it's the idea that her intimacy and her love is something that is constantly needing to be merited or qualified for. And guys who only see sex and love in a transactional context will just simply chase their tail until the day that they die. So when Adam Sosnick brings up the idea of conditional love versus unconditional love, what women hear is that it's almost like the pouty, pandering child who says, I want unconditional love, and I want mommy's love. Mommy loved me unconditionally. That's what women hear. But see, what they're saying is like, you didn't do anything to earn my love. In a very similar sense to, you didn't do anything to earn my respect. It's almost a reversal of terms in that sense. So when a woman hears conditional versus unconditional love, it almost sounds like the man stating, in this case, Adam Sosnick, stating it is in some way wanting of his mother's love, or wanting of something that's sort of unconditional, the want for it. And that's why I always have to, it's unmerited, right? Yeah. So, and that, again, that goes back to the men's version of respect versus women's version of respect. So when we put this, by the way, this whole conversation should never be put in the terms of conditional love versus unconditional love. It should only be in the terms of men's definition of love versus women's definition of love, because then what you do is you understand the miscommunication between the sexes as opposed to what is expected of the sexes. So if a man says, well, guess what? It's like the Pretty Woman narrative, it's like Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, right? And it's the hooker with the heart of gold. She's still very opportunistic, and she still has sex for money or is transactional to her. But she meets Prince Charming, who's this rich industrialist guy who enjoys, I guess, hookers, is his hobby, I guess. But she's the hooker with the heart of gold, and he falls in love with her, and she falls in love with him. But the understanding between the two of them is that he loves idealistically, and he can afford to love idealistically because he's a rich, he's Bruce Wayne, right? He's a rich industrialist who can wear tuxedos and give her very expensive necklaces and things like that. And then on the opposite side is this fantasy that Richard Gere's character in Pretty Woman understands her transactional nature of love, and he's more than willing to accept that because he has the means with which to do so. So between the two of them, they fall in love because they've come to an understanding that his love definition and her love definition are two different things. But that doesn't matter because he is in a position and she is in such a position that they can both make those things work together. And again, that's why it's a fantasy and not actually something that's reflective of reality. And people want to see it's a romantic comedy at that point. And so when you look at the differences between like what women need in terms of conditionality versus what their conditionality is based on, which is opportunism, women need long-term security longer than men do. So, or at all for that matter. So women's, prime sexual years are between 18 and 28 years old. And that's when she's at her peak agency. But that's a 10-year window and hopefully a very long life where she's going to need long-term security longer than she has the ability to attract it. And so that security need is really the basis of women's opportunism. They know on some level of consciousness that they're going to need to have long-term security from a guy who's, whether that's protection, provisioning, parental investment, and there's, emotional investment and emotional security too. It's not just about, financial security certainly plays into that, but it's also emotional security. It's also dependability. That's why women want a guy who's loyal and dependable, because they can't, above all, women being the vulnerable sex need for security, long-term security in a very chaotic and very dangerous world. Because in our ancestral past, anything could kill them, especially when they're pregnant, especially when they're vulnerable and they're taking care of, infant and toddler children for a good portion of their lives. When children don't become self-sufficient until they're like 7 or 8 or 9 years old, and then possibly she's got another child in tow for the, right after the first one. Well, yeah, that's the primary focus for women when it comes to just life in general. That's why women tend to be more risk averse. That's why women don't want to take chances. I should also point out that's why women tend to be more germophobic than men do as well, simply because they are more concerned with pathogens and cleanliness. They used to be, anyways, more concerned with like cleanliness and germs and things like that, because those were things that could kill the children. So that long-term security need and all of the criteria we just listed off for women being more opportunistic, all that opportunism comes from, it's a feature, it's not a bug. Women are looking for something. They want the bigger and better deal, whether it's the guy with the big cock, or the guy with the who looks better and is more arousing, or it's the guy who's Richard Gere in Pretty Woman, the guy who can provide unconditionally and confirmedly long-term security for a woman. And so it's not about unconditional love versus conditional love. It's about the mismatch of men's concept of love being idealistic and women's concept of love being opportunistic. And again, there's nothing wrong with either of those, by the way, because men almost have to be idealists, especially today, when it comes to investing their emotions in what they believe women should be able to reciprocate when it comes to their investment of emotion and intimacy and everything else. So last thing I want to get to here, just before we go, in the same, this is from my post from, when did I post this? This was back in December 27th, 2011. This is actually 12 years old now. As I said, women are incapable of loving a man in a way that a man idealizes is possible, in a way that he thinks that she should be capable of loving him. So, and then the other quote from this is, I really, really hope that the myth that girls are hopeless romantics gets kicked to the curb as soon as possible. Everyone needs to realize that men are the romantics pretending to be realists, and women are vice versa. So that romanticism that goes in there is really sort of it's almost an inversion of what most people believe, because we think of women being the romantic ones, when in fact it's men that actually have to deliver on romance. They have to be romantic. It's date night. It's I got to think of some way to go through jump through all these hoops in order to get her either aroused, or to get her to like me, or to get her to even return my phone calls. And somewhere along the line, romance happens, But romance is not something that is planned. It's not something, because anytime men try to plan romance, it's always contrived, because observing a process changes the process. So, for instance, like when a woman hangs on to the little ring you fashioned out of a gum wrapper, and it was very important to her enough so that she still keeps it in her jewelry box 10 years after you're married, and you didn't even know she did. That's because that nostalgia and that sentimentality is something that we weren't trying to be romantic. It just happened in that moment. But when you try to manufacture it, when you try to have date night, when you try to keep it fresh, when you try to, keep the fire burning or whatever, make your relationship work, spice it up a little bit, it's never as satisfying as the time that you made that little gum wrapper ring that she still keeps in her jewelry box, because that's what she remembers and that's what she keeps going back to. So, but the reason I'm even bringing this up is that's idealism. That's the ideal that it doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter if I am, a prince or a pauper. She's going to love me because for the sake of love. And I didn't say unconditionally. I said, but women will love a man just for the sake of loving him, because that's, love wins, right? Love triumphs. Love conquers all. You can even find it in the Bible, right? If you go, what is it, Corinthians? And so, but that whole scripture, and I don't think love is this and love is that. We deify love. We turn love into something that is cosmic and eternal and ephemeral, and God is love, right? I have a full chapter in my fourth book, Religion, where I outline the difference between God is love and love is God. And love is God is really kind of where we're at right now, where we sort of we put love and the feeling, the emotive state of love, as really something that's almost like a god, like deified, because that's what we want more than anything else. And we don't necessarily want to consider the price and consider what is necessary and what you're responsible for in maintaining that. It also goes back to happiness as well, which is sort of this idea of contentment, the idea that you can sustain happiness and contentment and love, I think all the good feeling, and name a good emotion, that you can sustain that indefinitely, when in fact the human condition is really dependent on discontent and how you deal with that discontent. The happiest people in the world are creatively discontent, and they know they are, and they're happy in doing what it is that they're doing. So can you maintain love? Can you have love between men and women? Absolutely, of course you can. But it comes at the price of understanding what men's concept of love is and what women's concept of love is. So things get kind of, the waters get muddied when people start using terms like conditional and unconditional, because then it seems like men are pouting, or men are turning into little baby boys, and they're just looking for mommy's, they want to suckle on mommy's tit, right? And that's not what it's about. It's about understanding the difference in definition between the two sexes. And you can find all of that great stuff in my first book, The Rational Male, which is available on Amazon. The 10th anniversary edition of it will be available in the beginning of October. And you'll find that in the sixth iron rule of Tomasi. Men believe that love matters for the sake of it. Women love opportunistically. Also, if you want to read that chapter, you can simply go to therationalmale.com and then just look up, you can search for Iron Rule Tomasi number 6. So that's where you'll find all that good stuff. And I should also point out that that's the basis of where Adam is actually picking it up from. The first kid in the telephone game, that's me. The fifth kid might be Myron. The 10th kid is most definitely Adam Sosnick at this point. And again, nothing but love, but for Adam Sosnick, it's just concepts like this deserve, I think, a little bit of explanation. And I don't think we get enough of that right now, because it's too easy to point fingers and point and sputter and laugh at things and think things are ridiculous without really understanding how people came to the idea of, well, in this case, the differences in the gendered concept between love and between men and women. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Perhaps I'll get into respect in the next one, but we're going to be doing more of these Red Pill 101 shows, and just quick hit ones so you guys get a better understanding of things. And we'll see you on the next one.